On July 9, 2026, the energy security of the world's most populous nation underwent a truly massive shift. In Melbourne, Prime Ministers Narendra Modi and Anthony Albanese signed an administrative arrangement to activate the commercial export of Australian uranium to India. These signatures end a 12-year stalemate, finally connecting the world's largest uranium reserves to its most rapidly expanding power grid. India's nuclear capacity is currently 8.8 gigawatts. By 2047, its goal is 100 gigawatts, equaling France's entire fleet. But wind and solar are intermittent. To decarbonize, India requires baseload power, the steady 24-hour supply that nuclear provides. Australia possesses the resources to fuel this expansion, holding nearly 30% of global uranium reserves. Yet the country generates zero nuclear power of its own. A cooperation agreement was first signed in 2014 under Prime Minister Tony Abbott, yet for over a decade, zero commercial shipments followed. Despite a clear match between supply and demand, the trade remained frozen by two specific legal and diplomatic barriers. The first barrier was non-proliferation. Australia only exports uranium to countries that have signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT. India remains outside the NPT. It operates a sovereign military nuclear program, which for decades meant Australia could not verify that its uranium was being used exclusively for civilian power. The second barrier was financial. In 2010, India passed a law making raw material suppliers liable for damages in a reactor accident. Australian uranium mines are privately owned. Boards and legal councils refuse to sign export contracts, fearing that a single operational failure in an Indian plant could result in multi-billion-dollar product liability lawsuits. Diplomacy had reached its limit. Without a change in domestic law, the physical trade of uranium was commercially impossible. By 2026, the pressure to resolve the deadlock increased. Canada had already begun capturing the Indian market, and Australia's strategic partners were deepening their security ties with New Delhi. Australia's mining sector faced being permanently excluded from India's $100 billion nuclear build-out. The resolution was the Shanti Act of 2025. It repealed old liability rules, establishing a firm, tiered financial cap for suppliers. This law aligned Indian liability with global norms and created the rigorous accounting mechanisms needed to satisfy Australian export safeguards. This domestic legislative shift in New Delhi provided the exact regulatory certainty required to end the 12-year international trade standoff. While the uranium deal is a commercial milestone, it sits within a broader strategic framework. At the same Melbourne summit, the two leaders signed agreements on defense cooperation, space tracking infrastructure, and the supply of critical minerals like lithium and cobalt. These new pacts are specifically designed to secure critical supply chains and actively balance shifting regional power dynamics. The uranium trade represents the primary physical component of this growing partnership. Historically, the global non-proliferation order functioned by isolating nuclear-armed states that refused to sign the NPT. However, as India's demand for electricity tripled, the cost of that isolation changed. Denying 1.4 billion people access to clean baseload power became an untenable climate and strategic risk. The July 2026 agreement demonstrates that non-proliferation rules are being adapted to a new reality. By establishing bilateral trust and legislative reform, Australia and India have found a path to fuel the world's most ambitious clean energy expansion.